Cameron Munster is back this week and he opens up about the white powder scandal that threatened to derail his career at the Melbourne Storm. You can catch the full interview tomorrow from 7 p.m.
The board was ready to rip my contract up, and obviously it hit home when I obviously have a beautiful partner at home and a baby on the way. And I guess it's easy when you obviously got a job and an income coming through, you can support them. And my income and my support was obviously up in the air, and that really hit home. Another thing that hit home was probably my mum and my dad crying again. Obviously, I've had speculations about obviously alcohol and everything before, and everyone obviously thinks it's just the same thing, same Cameron again, and that's fine. I only can please myself and my family, and that's all I wanted to please. And yeah, I'm doing really well. Really excited for the year to come, and just the things that I needed to change was something I wanted to do as well.
Yeah, Cameron Munster, much awaited return, looking fit, looking healthy, very raw and honest interview there with Lara Pitt,
Yeah.
and you actually interviewed him only a few weeks ago, Buzz.
In December, just before Christmas, I went down to Melbourne and I sat there in the Storm boardroom, tape recorder going, and I've rarely done a more honest or open interview with a player. And when he started talking about his gambling, he admitted that he lost $70,000 in one day in lockdown last year. He admitted that he'd bet on Saturdays, and even before a game he was trying to get out in the last at Ascot or wherever, he'd go to the cubicle, in the toilets, in the dressing room, and watch a race on his phone. And that's why he went to rehab.
Well, you could see he was distracted in his performances last year, Buzz. But his mind wasn't fully. But
Kenny, when I saw him, you could see just the colour of his skin, the spark, the way he was training, that he got a lot out of rehab. And he hasn't had a drink since. He hasn't had a bet since.
Well, that's the point. Like, a lot of people will say stuff, but they've got to own it. And it's a long year, and there's a lot of distractions with rugby league and having fame, and you know, when your teammates are going and having one beer or whatever, and you know, a sad day out is probably going to the races with your bride or whatever.
But you've played footy with a lot of punters.
Yeah.
In the dressing room.
It nearly cost him his career. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like the Storm, like if Matt Tripp hadn't stepped in as the chairman, he would no longer be in Storm colours. He said there the board wanted to sack him. It was not just the board, it was the football club as well. The football department wanted him. It used up all his excuses.
But when he's dealing with gambling, when he's dealing with alcohol, when he's dealing with a white powder scandal, for him to present himself the way he has this year, and you've heard Craig Bellamy talk about it, it's a huge rap to the kid. It really is.
It is.
And I'll be cheering for him.
I think everyone will though, Buzz.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's also remember, it's also a cautionary tale here. This is a guy who 2 years ago everyone said is basically on the precipice of being the next great player in the game. And it nearly all went pear-shaped. It really did. The club that has nurtured him and brought him through and has put up with so many indiscretions from him, were about to sack him, except for the chairman's intervention and Tripp saying he will not be going anywhere else. He was gone. And then what sort of tailspin does that put him in then? I know in the end Melbourne sent him away and put him in rehab, did all the right things for him. But this is how tricky it can be for these guys. And look, it's one of those things.
Well, it's
I think
a lesson for the other guys too, because
it's a lesson.
The access to all those things is there for every kid growing up at the moment, let alone rugby league players, and you can get caught up in it very easily. Mate, he had to grow up. He knew he had to grow up. He's just had a beautiful little boy, Jackson, with his partner, Bianca. So sooner or later, you know, your life changes and you grow up, and you got to realise the mistakes that you've made. Well, you
look at all young football, not all young footballers. You look at someone like Sonny Bill Williams at Munster's age, and he was terribly off the rails. Look at the person he is today.
Yeah, but look at the
and there are a lot of stories like that.
Look at his role models at Melbourne. Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk, Craig Bellamy, Robbie Kearns. They're great stand-up citizens, right? The Bulldogs was a bit loose. That era, when he came into that side, it was a bit loose. It wasn't a Melbourne Storm. It was a
but you know
Melbourne Storm was a no-dickhead
he's apologised to each and every.
And so he should have. The way
he
he and Brandon Smith, they sat there and they laughed, and they said that whatever down the well. That's not cool. I wouldn't have liked that. I felt sorry for the Melbourne guys that have set their standard in one of the toughest markets in rugby league to go to Melbourne and have the Melbourne Storm and win and probably be one of the greatest sides in the last 5 years.
But that's the other thing, though, Buzz. Like, they've gone down there into foreign territory, hostile territory, AFL territory, to try and do this, and so many good people have come before them and done such a magnificent job of selling the club and building the club to the point they are now one of the big brands in Australian sport, in any code. They are recognised everywhere. Their star players are recognised everywhere. And there's just been a couple of signs in the last few years of a couple of blokes, once Cameron's out of the joint, a couple of blokes just getting a little bit ahead of where they are. Munster was one of them. And
2 years ago, he won the Wally Lewis medal as best player in Origin when Queensland won the Impossible Series. He should be the Australian 5'8" this year at the World Cup, all things going well. And I think he will.
Yeah. And I hope so too, Buzz. I hope so that he has that career, probably because Melbourne and for Queensland and for Cameron Munster himself.